Good evening. I'd like to call to order the January 10th, 2024. This is a special meeting of the Advisory Commission on Coastal Waters. And we will be talking about mooring ordinances in particular. But before we proceed, the special agenda, we have a few house items that Julie will talk about.
Great. Okay, so welcome to 2024 and the new regime. We're looking forward to accomplishing a lot this year. We want to thank Bill Cavers for last year doing such a great job. I also want to say that everybody did a great job last year, really dug in, a lot of outside of the committee enthusiasm and work, and we'd love to see that continue this year. And if people didn't get a chance to step up last year, we really hope they try to find something they're really interested in that they could get involved in. And special thanks to the mooring committee, because I know this was a ton of work, guys. So
There's an end in sight.
yes.
The project.
Well, it's next level.
There's a project.
There's a milestone inside. I don't know if it's an end.
No, there's an end.
Yeah.
There's an end.
So very exciting. Monica, I think we all know, is working on getting us out on Friday to
Right.
Great Island.
Yeah,
Bill,
we're trying to get everybody that can make it, can they make it at 1 o'clock on Friday? And we're gonna try to get something on the weekend too, because Kevin, obviously, and people are working, they should be working, so. Does anybody, how many can go on Friday at 1 o'clock? 1, 2, 3, 4?
How long do you think this is gonna run?
What's that?
How long do you think this will run?
I don't know. You can leave anytime you want.
When I did it, it was about an hour.
Okay, about an hour.
I can do.
You can do that?
That should work.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. Okay, that I'll let Monica know that, and she'll also tell us, where we meet and all that good stuff, and then we'll go from there. Okay.
Yeah, very
great.
exciting.
Okay.
And then our first regular meeting will be on the 12th, and we're going to bring in some guest speakers from Park and Rec that worked on the Pear Tree Point dredging. Michael,
Segro?
yes,
Scrub.
don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Scrub.
And he's
Scrub.
going to bring in the consultant who pulled together the dredging permitting process. So that's exciting. And then Bill and I are going to get in front of John Zagrowski in January and talk to him about moving the channel dredge permitting and sediment sample stage forward for the Darien Harbor Channel. So hopefully we'll get that moving forward in the early part of this year. Bill and I are also both attending alternately the Great Island Commission meetings, and hopefully we can report back some interesting stuff on that going forward. Talked about the clerk schedule, so everybody's going to take a turn, and because we're all adults, if you cannot attend the meeting, we leave it up to you to find a replacement or swap your date, and appreciate everybody's input.
Did you send out assignments for that? I
Yeah.
didn't notice.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, here it
I
comes.
got the date, I saw the dates, but I didn't see the assignments.
Yeah. Bad news, yes.
And of course, if anybody wants to take on the clerk spot, that remains open. Let's see.
I coveted clerks.
We might be able to raise a small sum of money to compensate you for doing it.
Straws.
Excellent chance to work on your writing skills. We also want to let everyone know that while we have a couple things that we want to get done this year, we're open to any ideas to add to the agenda. Speakers, definitely encouraged if you can think of anything that's going on in town or even statewide that you want to have everybody be educated on. Please bring it to us. Our ears are open and our minds. With that, we're going to move on to
Okay.
the topic du jour.
So tonight's focus is on concluding the first goal of completing the wording of the town ordinance / regulations on moorings in Darien waters to the point where we, as a commission, can agree to send the document to the Board of Selectmen for further review within the town government. That's what we'd like to accomplish. So
Pretty far along, right?
it's all been, everybody's looked at it a number of times, and hopefully one more time. But there's two particular items, and maybe three, anybody who else has an item that were identified, and Flip brought those up to us, that we need to tackle first. We need to discuss that, how we feel about it, and maybe even, show of hands on numbers on some of these, so we can come to some terms on that. So if we want to jump right into this, if everybody's okay with our kind of focus that we try to move this forward.
Yeah, just reflecting what you said, to the extent that there's an activity about moving regulations versus ordinance.
I use both those together because I don't know the difference.
This is sort of, in a sense, assuming they're all one, or it's just throwing everything in there. When we get guidance as to what should be regulations as compared to ordinance, we can reshuffle things.
I'm agreeing. What I'm just suggesting, I think there is a step that says if the goal is to leave this meeting with consensus and then flip it to the Board of Selectmen, I think there's an intermediate step, which is steps would include, for example, review by legal.
Well, I think as we're advisors, my thought is that we get them what we have and how we feel about it, and let them decide to tell us if they want us to take that to the next step, or they will take it. Because some of these may be a little bit, we may not have full agreement on some of these tonight. In particular, the first one we talk about, which would be the number of moorings. So one of those items might be, if we bring that to the select people and say, generally we agree on everything. Here's one item that we have 3, 4 that don't agree, and 4 that do agree on that item. So,
But we can say, if you look at the email Julie sent out, where there's 4 items listed in the, that sort of we need external input. We can say to them,
Right.
give it to them, do you want to look at it first? Do you want us to go run these down, or do you want to, we
Right.
could ask them how they want to do it.
yeah.
Okay.
And that way we'll get some guidance, right up front, instead of us going off on a path that we think is right. Maybe they might have another thought. And we'll find out. I'm sure they'll be glad to tell us. So do you want to go right into the first one about the number of moorings that we feel should be allowed in Darien Harbor? I know people have definite opinions.
With the 1/3, I'm just following.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it?
No, I was looking at the running though.
Okay. So we can have discussion on this. We can have a show of hands. It's basically 2 of 1. Although, in my point, 1 can go with caveats, such as you have it before, you have 2 now, we're not going to pull it from you. But my opinion, I'll throw mine out first, is with a large waiting list, I just feel it's important to go to the public that we are not asking to make it a carte blanche 2, we're asking 1, but there will be some nuances to that. And John, this is really your bag, because I know that you actually don't mind too. So it's funny that normally I'm quite agreeing with things you do, but I'm not on this one. So I guess we can talk about it more, or show hands about how we feel that. And if I'm the only one that says 1, then I'll realize I'm the only one that wants that.
Could I, oh, sorry. I was just gonna have Bill Caver, since I think he'd raised this before, if he could give the list of caveats he thought might be appropriate.
Happy to. Let me just ask a process thing. I have a weird Zoom. I just see one picture which says town meeting and myself. Does everybody else see themselves? The normal Zoom thing of all participants being in video?
I think you're the only one on, here we go. Sorry.
You're at a party with 1.
I had you facing the ceiling, so I didn't do it.
There you go. Yeah, who am I talking to
Just
here?
like what's going on here? Yeah. So I'll just sort of echo some things I think Bill just said and elaborate. I think it's sort of a tin ear to the task of addressing the long harbor wait list to put the 2 permitted moorings in our codes. and that be that sort of the blanket rule. I think there's a way to do this which, says to the public, the residents of the town, we're addressing your concern, only one permitted mooring, but then we elaborate on special cases where two would be allowed. And there's a couple of ways to do this. You could do something like put a clause at the front of this which says, other than within a single harbor, mooring holders may have no more than one permitted, other than in a single harbor, mooring holders may have up to 2 permitted moorings in Darien coastal waters. And then say something about grandfathering existing holders who have more than one mooring in a single harbor, but for a time period. And I don't know what that time period should be, 5 years, 7 years, whatever. So that would be one way. And another way would just be to say there should only be one permitted mooring in Darien harbors, except for those grandfathered up for a time period, those who have littoral, maybe you'd say those who have littoral mooring rights already, but wish to have another mooring in some Darien harbor, and those who have a mooring in a day harbor, and then also a berthing harbor, so you wouldn't have 2 moorings within the sought-after places in a berthing harbor. So I think one of those 2 alternatives would grant to the residents of our town the right approach in the face of such a long mooring list.
Can we take those options step by step? Because I think, on some of them, I think there's relatively easy consensus. Does anybody have a problem with letting someone have one mooring in a berthing harbor and one mooring somewhere, in a day?
Scott Cove.
Scott Cove, Ziegler's Cove.
No.
That doesn't seem controversial.
Yeah,
All good.
So it's really, the only contentious item, I think, is whether you can have more than one mooring in a single berthing harbor. That's the case.
Or even bring it down, Darien Harbor, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you worried about Norotan Bay on the other side there?
Well, I don't know if there are any double mooring people in Norotan Bay.
There's one
Are
that
they?
I know of off the top of my head.
And Scotts
Maybe,
Cove? same
maybe
thing?
2. Well, Scotts Cove is, I think you may have only one truly berthing mooring in Scotts Cove.
No, okay, got it. So I'm just, the idea that you're trying to isolate where the contention lies.
Can I just make a suggestion? Because I think we can all come to if you listen to what Bill said, the first one makes all the sense in the world. Forget about the second one, Bill, because that was way too complicated. The first one was, if one in a berthing harbor, and then if you have a second one in a berthing harbor, then you're grandfathered. I would say, I think if you're grandfathered, you're grandfathered. And if you start putting a time limit on it, I just think that's unfair
I agree.
to somebody. And if you were to, so I would say that the optics of putting one and grandfathering for everyone else, you're not really hurting anyone, in my opinion, and you're sticking with what we already have, which is nobody has 3, somebody has 2, you can't take it away from them after 5 years or 7 years. I think that would be a mistake. And it would be like Big Brother, and I don't think we want to be Big Brother. I think we want to open up more moorings for everyone else. So there's how many, Bill, I'm sorry, how many double moorings are there with 2 berthing harbors?
A handful. I don't have an exact
Yeah,
number.
so there's a handful.
Say 4 or 5 people at the most.
Yeah.
So I think that makes sense, but also to follow up on one thing that Bill said, I would not make any exceptions in the language for littoral
Neither would I.
holders. If you get a mooring because you have littoral rights, that's great, but that's your mooring.
Yeah, you don't take littoral, I've gone through this, it's a big legal thing. If you have a marshland and you can't put a boat in front of your marshland, that does not mean you have rights to take your mooring and go put it in the middle of Darien Harbor. It does not.
Right. Well, that's one of the things we need to get guidance from outside.
Right, so you can get that guidance.
I think you're probably right, but.
That's what it was in Rhode Island. I'm assuming it's the same, but in any event. So we had to deal with the same kind of topics. So to
That
me,
would just not give, you can't have a littoral mooring and a regular harbor mooring.
Do we
exactly.
have any people in that mood today?
People who have we have people with littoral mooring, there's a,
So this is where we
How
come
many
back
of
to facts.
well, so what's the question exactly? What do we have?
Do we have, how many moorings today in Darien, the berthing harbor? How many permit owners have more than one mooring? I'm just want to get the facts.
Okay, I would say probably you could count them on one hand.
So that means 5.
5, probably, in that neighborhood.
Do we have any people that have littoral moorings? I guess designates littoral and a.
Well, you have a
second
mooring
on that list.
because you have, the only difference between anyone else is if you have littoral rights, you just don't have to get on the wait list. So you get a mooring. So it's just a mooring, not a littoral mooring. Okay, so
Exactly.
they get a mooring.
Are they counted
How many
in that 5?
people have littoral moorings? I'd have to do a little digging on that, but there's a few of them. There's a number of them in town,
Is that,
in Darien Harbor.
is that, sorry for interrupting you, is that included in the hand of 5? Those people?
No. Oh, well, there could be people who have littoral, yeah, I know
Yes.
one person right off the bat, there's littoral, has 2. Let's see, two,
Yeah, probably a decent percentage of the 2
yeah,
moorings.
probably.
Are people who are on the
Yeah. I mean,
inside
there's
of
a-
Long Neck.
There's the further question to what Rob was saying of what are actually your rights as a littoral property owner in terms of having moorings. We may have historically given people more rights than they should have, so you might actually take some of those, not that we would take moorings away, but
See, where I come from on this whole thing is, I really want to get, John, we discussed this last meeting, get to the facts of the mooring waiting list, the number of boats by size.
you can't,
What do you mean you can't? What do you mean we can't get to the facts about the number of boats that have on their waiting list by boat size, by draft size and boat type?
Because people don't
But-
necessarily have the boats who are on the waiting list.
Yeah,
But
there's,
Kevin,
there,
we're
But the-
also,
the-
we're
The
we're
ones
putting
that are known
this-
to us, though, that ones,
Kevin,
But that's
we're
not
putting
gonna
this
be a
in place
meaningful
for the
answer.
entire this is for the future. It's not
right,
just
so
to
if
deal
you know
with
it,
today.
if that was a known, what are you trying to map out?
I'm just trying to understand.
How much shorter the waiting list
Yeah,
would
really,
be? Yeah, I
in
got
reality,
you.
what is the nature of our problem? We continue to consider the problem we're trying to solve is a long waiting list. In fact, what is that waiting list by class of boat, by class of permit requests?
Well, you can the easiest way to break it up is sailboats with deep draft,
Okay.
power boats, outboard power boats with shallow draft, boats from 21, say, to 28 feet outboard. Then you'll have in that same range, a little bit bigger inboard. And to understand where they go as things open up, as a mooring opens up, you have to look at the list and decide what's going to fit in that spot.
All I'm just trying to get the fact is, we're trying to use guidance, the guidance I think we've used about the number of moorings that a person should have access to or use, permitted moorings, is because we have a long waiting list. I just want to get to the facts, and clarity on the facts at a given point in time. How many people in each of those groups do we have in a waiting list?
Well, let me throw one more thing. If there were 10 people on the waiting list, and they said people were allowed to have 2 moorings, I'd be annoyed if I was one of those 10. So I look at it, there's a lot more than 10 on that, but why should, I'm on this list and people are allowed to have 2 if they are not grandfathered? Grandfather's one thing, but now all of a sudden, we allow them to have 2, they put in 2, and I'm
Why
number
is it-
10 on that list.
I guess I'm taking the contrarian view. Why is it wrong for a person to have more than one?
because there's a wait list. And the
People,
only,
but we got back to what's the
the
nature of the wait
only
list?
question is the wait list long, really long, humongously long? It's one of those, all right? There's no fact pattern in front of any of us that would suggest that there's not people who are waiting for moorings for multiple years. That's those are facts.
You just want
No, the
numbers.
fact is-
I mean, the number that's been
Just-
used historically is 4 to 5 years is the wait. It could be longer, depending on the type of boat you have. It could be shorter, depending on the type of boat you have.
But again, Kevin, if you have Montauk 17 whaler, which in the normal course would be kind of in a prime waiting list for an interior of the harbor mooring. That's gonna be a long wait. If you said, this is a Boston whaler, can't sink under any waves, and I'm willing to take a long launch ride, and I want a mooring out at the mouth of the harbor, and now with the provisions that we've put in where people who have existing moorings can put in to change their location from year to year, that person could probably go in almost immediately. So this is why it's hard, even within classes of boats, to say, here's what the number of years wait is, because some of it is, where do you want to be?
That's why I go back to the point you raised earlier that says, I'm one of 10, and I can't get a mooring, and I'll be there for 4 or 5 years. From a practical purpose, I think I'm trying to get the facts to say, what is the real waiting period for these different people, different classes of boats? Is there in fact a waiting list, a practical one, or basically it's one that says, you prefer to be in one location versus the other, but there is no waiting list in practice.
There is a wait list.
I know that, but we keep hearing this, John. I'm trying to get the fact behind it.
You're asking me to answer a question that I would have to know the future in order to.
No, I'm asking for right now, a sampling of time right now, because we're operating today's time frame.
I think John's answered this question in the earlier meeting where he said, I believe it was 180 boats on the waiting list.
There's 200 people on the wait list.
Okay. And he's saying 4 to 5 years on average. I don't think that we can parse the ordinance to deal with different sections of the harbor. We need to deal with the ordinance as a global rule. Because it's just, it would be completely unmanageable.
To solve a problem that I'm not convinced that we have a problem. Because we've heard ad nausea, excuse me, that choice, that's confrontational. We've heard it greatly that the length of the waiting list is 4 to 5 years. When in practice, we just gave the use case that said for that type of a common use, it can be immediately. There is no waiting list. So yet we're going to manage to wait.
For one mooring.
But that's, I was giving that as an example that was an extreme example, and I think nobody with a 17-foot whaler wants to have that boat way out there, and for good reason. And so, but there's shades of gray all along that spectrum. That's where, to me, as I have dealt with John and I've dealt with moorings, with the Norotan mooring servicing business, there's clearly a wait. It's not a fiction that there's a wait. It's hard to say whether it is 2 years, 5 years, whether there's room on the margin for somebody kind of can get a less desirable mooring, and then it's nebulous, but there is a wait, and 100% of the people who are on that list will tell you that they are waiting.
And even if if a person were to take up the worst choice mooring, there's not 180 worst choice moorings out there, right? So
That's
maybe there's a handful, or I don't even know, are there any open moorings
There are open moorings, yes, there are, which we are going to fill this year. So we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 moorings that are going to be open. I have 15 people that deferred to this year because they are already committed. They will scoop that up. And there'll probably be a few people in there also who didn't say that they were going to defer, but they probably will take me up on it. So I'm going to fill up the 20 very, very quickly.
So 20 would go, 180 would go to 160. But am I understand this correctly?
Yeah, and then I get new applications all the time.
Sure.
So although I've assigned people, the list is still at 200. Because I get people through the entire year.
The number of moorings in the harbor is not like a pure number that's given to us and it's the right number. John and we have been looking for more places to put moorings, and they definitely Some of those are like, in my mind, no-brainer places that are perfectly good as other moorings. Others are less good. And so I think this year we will also be pushing somewhat of the boundaries on allowing more moorings to go in, but there's a limit to how.
It's fine.
Similarly, you can pack the moorings that are out there more densely, or you can space them out. We are, I think, right now, if anything, too densely packed. We do run into occasional problems of boats hitting each other while they're both at mooring.
So trying to focus this back to this number 1 or 2 moorings, I mean, who is not happy with, we have 1 mooring?
Can I
With-
make maybe a
yeah.
hybrid suggestion?
You get some more out in here?
I-
Go
I-
ahead.
And maybe this just drags it on.
No, drag it on.
I'm generally in favor of people having 1 mooring.
Mhm.
I'm generally in favor of people who have 2 now being grandfathered
Okay.
in some way. I think I'm also probably in favor of the harbor master having discretion to
Right.
give someone a second mooring if they have a big boat that wants to be out at the mouth of the harbor that's otherwise not going to be used, right? So it seems to me we ought to rely on the discretion of the harbor master, but try to provide some guardrails. We want to use as much of the harbor as we can and give people maximum opportunity to moor their boats to the extent practical, without bumping into each other or having 17-foot whalers like the one I have getting bashed out in big waves.
Right. So I'll be the contrarian because I believe strongly that there should be no reason that a person should not have access to 2 moorings, provided that their course to get there is through waiting in the hierarchy of when I sought a mooring for my second one, and then I got on the list and I waited my turn. Why should I not have access to 2 moorings? So I'll be the contrarian there. I think that is the right thing to do. I think that's the thing we have never sought something different in the history of our harbor to restrict the number of moorings.
Would you be good if we said, and if our waiting list falls below 25?
Well, for the reason I would say the answer to the question is no, because for the same reason that there's a view here that there'll always be a long waiting list, then that's an impractical.
No, that doesn't mean there's going to be a long waiting list. That just means you have 1 until there isn't a long waiting list. And if there's not because what you don't want to do is you don't want to discourage. If somebody says, "Oh, I want to move to Darien," and I'm a boater, well, you're never going to get on this list. And there's 200. And you're ahead of them, and you're getting the second one because you got in line. No, I just think that's not good for the town, my opinion. Everyone should have access to a mooring if they can, and 2.
I understand your point, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, so we can agree to disagree on that. Yeah.
That's why I'm presenting a different view that says,
Yeah,
I
no.
think we should restrict it to 2.
Okay.
Restrict it to only 1, provided this, my path to a second one is I go through the time-honored process of getting a list, waiting my turn. So that's my view.
So can we put a show of hands that we're going to promote to the Board of Selectmen? 1 with grandfathering and others' language, and those that think 2. So at least we can let the Board of Selectmen know how our commission feels.
Is just on the second condition for the grandfathering, is that with a time limit? Or is that with you retain your grandfather right into the future? Because that's an
I
important.
don't have a detail on that, and I don't know how we want to play
I know it
that.
seems problematic to me, but are you going to get forced to be getting rid of your boat in
Yeah.
5 years?
Yeah.
I would say no,
Yeah.
I would say no time limit.
I would say no time.
Yeah, no time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if that's the conditions, then you have a create your vote.
I agree with your proposal, with the discretion also. And that would also take care of, if the waiting list got very short,
Right.
then the harbor master could have
Right.
leeway to allocate.
Have a way to allocate a second.
So
I think
could
this is
someone
one that-
try to
Articulate that.
articulate what we are potentially agreeing?
If I could just
Voting on
copy
it.
what David said, that's what I would agree with.
So David said 1 mooring with grandfathering, without time limitation.
And that's
currently
in a berthing harbor.
On a
In a birthday.
berthing harbor.
Well, you wouldn't want them to have two moorings in a day harbor either, so doesn't it go back to the phrase, the clause, other than within a single harbor?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
Do we have,
fair.
does that change the pattern you have now, John? Are the people with?
We,
But what
we
I-
do have people in day harbors that have more than one mooring.
They should be grandfathered too.
Day harbor being.
But they're for
Zippers and
for
Scots?
individual boats. So it's not like they have one boat and 2 day moorings.
They have two boats.
They have 2 boats. I don't know that it makes all that much difference, but
Yeah, wouldn't it comply with the other parts of the permit, the expectation, well, I guess it's only the restriction on the number of days the mooring is restricted to the Darien Harbor.
that's, if you're gonna do that, that would be my vision. It would just be the berthing harbors.
I like what David said.
That's how it's constructed now, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to hark back to what David said, and whenever we are inclined to fine tune this to too much, I'd like to not.
I mean, this is
I'd like to
why
leave
we
it-
have John,
look-
right? I mean,
Yeah.
Actually, I have to take back that statement I made. There are people who have one boat with a day mooring in Ziegler's and Scott's. That is a thing.
So that would be 3 moorings? No, I'm sorry, that's 2.
No, they'd only have 2. Nobody has more than 2, but they would have 2 day moorings. They wouldn't have,
Where do they trail their boat? Or they have a slip at the boat club?
they have a slip at the boat club or elsewhere. Yeah.
Did you want to finish your thought?
Now, that was done a long, long time ago, when there wasn't that much of a demand for day harbors. That has changed also.
My thought is that where we can provide guidance, I'd like to see it in an ordinance, and where there's specific implementation, I'd like to leave it to the discretion of the harbor master.
And future harbor masters is really what we're contemplating, right? This is not about any given harbor master, this is in the future.
I'm actually thinking about the right now, and if it's good for right now, it's good, in my opinion, for the future.
But the thought of putting a guiding clause in there, the harbor master is granted this, I don't know what the phraseology would be, but the harbor master is granted this discretion as long as, the boat waiting list is not.
As long as he's the harbor master.
No,
Whoever the harbor master is gets that discretion.
But
don't
again, I
even
don't,
understand
to
that.
the language that John circulated today, I don't know if anybody had a chance to read through that. I mean, we are sort of impinging in all of this on the authority that the state grants the harbor masters. So,
It does, but I would like agreement with the town and this commission to enforce I don't want to be, I can literally do whatever I want, but I don't want to be that way.
but what I'm saying is, for us to be putting all this kind of reservation of like, well, you can have your discretion, that's, like, you have that.
Right.
We don't need a lot of language giving you rights. We're trying to give some guiding principles that you agree with. But
Well, that's also be
I think we
correct.
wanna set the
There's been a
guardrails.
tremendous amount of controversy over, we hear it, we've all experienced the energy, the emotions in the harbor about moorings. So I think the guidance that we originally got toward was to create transparency, to manage down the emotions about how are decisions made. Now, while the prerogatives are in the state, if the intent is to be transparent and to be clear with how the asset will be managed, then we should put into the ordinance and the regulations our intent. And that is within
Most of the noise we're hearing in the harbor that I've heard, maybe you've heard different noise, when I've come across people who don't agree with me, it's because they believe they have the right to do with the mooring anything they please.
Yeah,
I can rent it out, I can do whatever I want with it, give it to a friend, I can give it to my kids. That's where I've encountered the friction. I don't know.
I think we've
Yeah.
covered this. This
Yeah.
is the intent is to try to get clarity and transparency about the intent of how asset will be managed.
How about notwithstanding the foregoing, the harbor master shall have reasonable discretion to allocate moorings based on facts and circumstances in an equitable manner?
That sounds,
Above the maximizing access to moorings in the harbor?
Is that in lieu of something, or is that incremental to, is that just a general?
When you said notwithstanding the foregoing was, we generally think it should be one mooring, but people who have moorings are grandfathered.
Okay, so that's an extension of that.
Yeah, correct.
Well, make your vote.
All right.
Go to vote.
So,
Julie, I'm going to count on you to actually capture that phrasing. I'm only going to say lengthy
Write it
discussion.
down where I forget it.
You're the lawyer.
of our commissioners that can vote, sorry, John.
oh, I was not gonna raise my hand.
Let's focus on putting in this, who feels we just have the word one or moorings available, and then we'll have to have some other verbiage behind it, such as grandfathering and such.
It has to
One
be-
with grandfather.
But it's that,
One with-
it's that language we just described, which is one mooring, grandfathered if you have two,
Right.
and then some degree of discretion on behalf of the harbor.
One mooring per berthing
Per
harbor.
berthing harbor?
One mooring per berthing harbor, yes.
Okay,
Any against?
one, got it, thank you.
It's not like we're
No,
not taking an official
no,
vote.
this is
No,
kind of
you're
a,
gonna,
when we go to the Board of Selectmen, we'll say, we didn't have full agreement on this. Five of us liked one, and one didn't like two, and, what do you think, Board of Selectmen? And let them kind of dwell on it. You
Yeah,
got another idea?
I just meant from a, process perspective.
Okay.
We didn't say we're taking actual votes. So I think this
Okay.
is the consensus with the dissenter,
Yeah.
rather than
All right.
a technical vote.
I don't think the Board of Selectmen will be the party that will weigh in on that kind of stuff. I would think, ignorant that I am of the
Okay.
town process, that they would look to us to draft a comprehensive set of ordinances, net of town council, net of our collective wisdom, right or wrong, and present that to them. I think they're going to then say, okay, got it. Is there public opinion on this? And then they're going to rise and vote. I don't think they would expect us to give them a 7th, 8th completed project, ask for an input, and then go from there. That's my,
Yeah, so
Yeah, I
what
think-
you're saying is we should put that into the draft. We can, on the side, say it wasn't unanimous, but that's the draft.
Okay.
I mean, the full comprehensive draft, I think, is what should go to the Board of Selectmen,
Okay.
including the management of ordinances, regulations, town input, town council. I think that's what they should expect of us. And this is our commission, this is our recommendation.
Okay.
They own the vote, and they'll do any necessary, because this will go in front of the public. They'll invite public comment before reducing this to regulation. That's my understanding of the process.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, John was clear on that. There'll be public comment on it, which
So-
is good.
Number 2. Determination
Your
of retains and
language.
vacated mooring first.
Oh, no, it was Jim's, it was Jim's, it was not yours. It's at the bottom of the page.
What page are we on, I'm sorry?
I think you said bottom of 10?
Bottom of 10?
Bottom of page 10. It has this,
Thank you.
remember the discussion where
Yes.
it was before John starts to allocate moorings for a new year, can you put into request, if you have an existing mooring, can you put in to request a different one?
And I'm going to state a little differently. When it comes to open moorings, where do we want to give John direction of prioritization? Either to a person on the waiting list for the first time, for example, or a person that already has a mooring owner.
Right, with it,
Right.
and that's how it's addressed here.
That's, I think, the point is, how do we want John to manage that asset?
I thought Jim's suggestion worked from my point of view.
Yeah.
I agree.
I agree.
Agree.
Yeah.
Okay?
And
Great.
John, as a project manager, you can, that's manageable from your perspective. This is consistent with what we talked about last time.
Yeah, I mean, I have to take a lot of things into consideration when I'm allocating moorings. I mean, I have people who do ask me, can I move to another area? I'm getting a bigger boat. I do what I, you know, like I said before, it's dependent upon the things that we mentioned earlier, size, draft, everything like that. It's a minor variant of what is already there, consideration.
And it's
So,
not like a totally free option for people, because in order to implement this, they then have to pay someone to move their mooring. So it's not like, it's not frictionless
Yeah.
for
Right.
people.
yeah. And it's not like I'm gonna start rearranging the harbor because one person asked to be moved. I'm not can't accommodate requests like that either. Well, I wanna be over there, but in order to do that, I would have to move several other boats. That's not gonna happen. Unless it's a benefit to the harbor, and that has happened.
But I think, just to be clear, I think, at least what I had understood this provision to be, I think it's what everybody's talking about, is it's really when somebody leaves, vacates a mooring location, you could kind of put in to go into that spot. We're not talking about a mooring holder like bumping people.
There's no displacement.
Yeah,
I don't think the language suggests,
right.
I think the language is clear.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know how John would handle it if you had 6 people that all of a sudden, hey, that's a great spot, I want that too. Now you have to mull out between boat sizes and, you know,
Then I think.
that's a tough one for you.
I think some seniority would have to, I'd have to
That's
take a
your
couple of
discretion.
things, yeah,
Your
but
discretion.
I'd look at seniority, how long they've been in the harbor, how long they've been on the wait list. Because that, like I said before, I don't want to rehash it, but the gaming factor. You know, I would look at a couple of different things to determine what would be fair.
This isn't like some auction house, though, where we put up a list of, here are the open moorings, would you like them? It's kind of, the fact that you even know that there's an open mooring, you have to kind of
You have to work the system.
be
Yes.
You'd have-
heads up.
You have to know the person that is vacating the mooring, and they spoke to the friend, and I'm not gonna deny, that happens. I already have somebody making that inquiry, because I already know somebody's vacating, and they've already asked me if they could go in there, and I said, well, you might wanna get on a wait list first, before we even discuss that, yeah. And then we'll go from there. Depends on your boat, how many other people are ahead of you, et cetera.
So I guess, say differently, with the language as constructed, bottom of page 10, let you administer with clarity. And ultimately, if a person is in that condition where they have an existing mooring and they desire a new mooring location, they'll now be able to know this and should contact you for that fact. It would seem it gets that full case.
When a new mooring becomes available, the harbor master shall first offer existing permit holders who desire a new mooring location. Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is fine. This is fine.
You just may get some people who say, hey, if there's a change, you're gonna have to manage that. That's the only thing. You'll have to manage it.
Yep.
Do we have any other points we want to dwell upon, John, especially you, just since you'll be so.
Let me just take a moment
That's
and
okay.
point out, this
Okay.
is not, I think, a controversial point. I just want to point out the changes that were made in the chart that was in there, because it may have been hard to see what the changes were, which is, we added the Token Beach Cove
Mhm.
as a harbor, and then we inserted the line that runs from the southwest corner of Contentment Island to the
Right.
eastern corner, whatever, of Hay Island, which is the boundary for the no wake zone. I
Okay.
think those were the main changes, but just to let everybody know.
John, does it help if you split Holly Pond, Sanford to Darien and mark that in there too, or not bother?
I mean,
I'm not pushing it.
We could, I mean,
I mean, I don't
we'll
know.
have to ask the
Yeah,
artist.
again, to be clear, we did not
Yeah,
delineate on here either the Darien
Yeah,
side of the
river.
5 Mile River, 'cause
Mile.
it's so small, you
Yeah.
can't do it. And then I don't even really know where the middle of Holly Pond would go.
Yeah,
It's fine, don't worry about it.
I don't think it's worth worrying
Okay,
about.
good.
Does this mean no wake buoys would be placed in existing no wake zone in the harbors differently than they are today? They tend to be a little bit farther in Darien.
Well, the only potential new buoys are over in front of Scott's and Ziegler's.
Yep.
Right there.
Yes.
There's a whole separate discussion about the buoys in the main Darien harbor, including the formal Coast Guard navigational buoys, which I think are in the wrong place, but not in the wrong place from where their current locations are, but they're in a suboptimal place relative to how the harbor should be laid out.
All right, we'll save it for another day.
Flip, so how do you see if we all agree that we're pretty much set on this? Or what do you feel the next step would be?
Well, we can insert some language around the one mooring, the two mooring thing. And then we can prepare a clean copy of this easily. And then I think, as we've discussed, I mean, we do need the input ultimately of legal and counsel, and the police department needs to review and make sure they're cool. I don't think they'll have a problem with it. So whether you want to just go to John and say, would you like to give it to them, or do you want us to give it to them?
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, and we can do that. Okay. That'd be
Because
great.
that cleans up ordinance, that checks the references, I think, Finn's task will be clean up the ordinances versus regulation, check the code, ensure that we have sufficient indemnification. I think that was also,
Yeah, that was at the top of it.
those are examples of the town, I think town council would do.
Or none,
Or none, or no changes, yeah, all right, whatever
whatever,
that strike that balance is.
yeah.
And I think that represents the work product of the committee, of the commission.
Yeah.
You know,
The committee did an incredible job.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you guys did.
subcommittee deserves a
Super.
big hand for the amount of work that went into
Super
this.
job. Thank you.
Props to Flip Hufford.
We have any other,
It's that typing class I took in high school.
Did you well?
With
And
a
art.
real typewriter.
Yeah.
any other business on the special ordinance that we need to talk about, or should we adjourn?
Do we need to formally vote on the final product?
Well, we can, I guess.
Can we do this in a special meeting, or does that have to go back before the commission?
Did we cover, was there 4 topics that we needed to
No,
address?
we need
Was
to
two?
vote
There
on
were
the
two
final
main
product,
topics.
because I don't think we have a final product right now. We have a working draft that we have consensus on, that we still need to have further review and input, but I don't think we have a final product.
Yeah, so what comes back from legal is a fluffed and buffed.
They're separating the regulations from the ordinances, they're checking the citations. Those are 2 biggies.
Yeah, there's the indemnification provisions.
All that stuff.
Yeah, it's all it's the 1 through 4 on Julie's email.
That goes back, I think the work product, the final output of that goes back to the commission for a vote. And that gets lifted to, I think that's the cost, I think it's lifted to 4. You guys have a different view, different thought?
Okay, then we need to do that probably in our next meeting, then, right?
Well, hopefully we'll be at that point.
Yeah, if I don't know how fast they'll turn it around.
Well,
February 12th, right?
yeah.
That's pretty close.
But Lori Bora,
So-
she knows, like, she's the expert on governance and how things go, and she'll, you know.
So what if
Shepherd through, hopefully.
What if we had this thing cleaned up where we all agree on now, not legal, look at it and everything else, and took that, we all agreed that's the final product, the product for at this point, and we took that to John and said, now we'd like to proceed and go forward with, like you talked about, go to legal counsel, go to the police department, and do you want us to do it, or do you want to do that? So could we have that at least at the next meeting, have that document, a few more changes on here, and then.
But just a clean copy, they don't need to see the sausage making.
Right.
No, no sausage.
Well, they're gonna need
Wait.
to see the markup to know what's changed.
That's what he's
You can't
typically
just-
requesting.
Oh,
Yeah, of
but we
course.
can give.
Oh, yeah.
we can
Against the
give
original.
We can, I'm sorry, when I said a clean,
Good point.
it's not like step by step. We can give a comprehensive black line versus the current ordinances,
Exactly.
as well as a clean one.
Okay.
Yeah, the current
What do you
ordinances
think?
are just like one page.
No, they're more than.
They're more than that.
They're more than that. It's most of it,
It's
it's
this.
a lot of this document.
Our
it's
friend
a document.
78
Yeah.
goes on and on.
No, I'm talking about what's on the website right now.
You're talking about I
Yeah,
think those
what's
are
it?
kind of like the regulations, aren't
The ordinances. Ordinances, they're
they?
like,
Well, this,
it's like a little more than a page maybe.
No.
this
The
is.
bullet points and everything here, hold, I have
A
it
lot
right
of
here.
this document is the actual chapter
Maybe I'm-
78
Maybe
section.
I'm mistaken.
I don't know if that matters.
I mean, we've been distributing
John, here it is.
step-by-step black lines, so this black line is not a comprehensive black line.
Yeah,
Here it is.
But a lot of this document is that original ordinance.
This is version-
yeah, it's a little, yeah, it's, yeah, you're
Just
right.
change the typeface and suddenly explodes into 6 pages.
Yeah. But it's a lot less than what we were proposing. Yeah, it's like 2.5,
But-
two and 3
But,
quarters.
And reformat.
just to be clear, from a timing point of view, I would suggest, and maybe it's 3 of us or something, we'll come up with some language on the number of moorings, how to work that, put it in. Because I don't think, the language itself, I don't think there's I don't think there's a lot of disagreement on it. It's just a question of whether it's one or more than one. And I think we should then just take that document, we don't need to vote on it, but you guys should take that document as soon as it's done, which could be in the next couple of days, and go to John and say, how do you want to go? We should not wait until the February.
I don't think
Yeah,
so.
and then we can also, if we need to do an interim email where maybe I can look at process, I'm not sure if we can vote not in an actual meeting
So
scenario.
that was the guidance we got from Lori.
What's that?
It has to be a standard meeting.
A standard
But,
meeting.
I'm not an expert in this. There are others who are gifted on.
Yeah.
But why do we need a vote in the near term? I don't think we do.
Its procedural question is, does the commission actually need to vote on this?
Right, this is still, to
It's
me.
a working
not-
document, it's still a working document.
Yeah.
It's a working document until it's
It's
done.
procedural. I don't know.
We'll run that down.
But I would like to see the language, because I'm obviously usually the language before it goes with that. I just want to put that on the record, I want to see the language. I think we've heard in general thoughts, just like to see that language, including the grandfather, this aspect of no expiration date, and this aspect of the 1/1.
Move to adjourn, anyone?
So moved.
Seconded? Adjourn.
Adjourn. Well done.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, John, that's.